This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, it is 1 o'clock. As we traditionally do, we open our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll join me, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, as noted on the agenda, we're going to open by opening the bid. We received one bid for the annual adjustment, cyclical reassessment.
This bid is from the Nexus Group, Zionsville, Indiana. Nexus Group proposed fee is $125,000 annually or $250,000 per 2-year project.
Is there a representative here from Nexus?
Yes, sir. It's my name is Josh Bennett. I'm a supervisor for the company. I live up in the branch.
Okay, so, yeah, this is right, 125 and 250.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Is there anything else you'd like to say about the bids?
I think it's fairly self-explanatory. I really just, you guys have questions, I'm here to answer them if you need to, but Nexus has been doing this for a very long time. I've been with the company for almost 15 years, and you'll be in very good hands. So, look forward to it.
all right. Traditionally, at this point, we take all bids under advisement till the department head, in this case, Kim, gets a chance to review it. So, what's your thoughts, Sal?
I could interject a little bit.
Okay,
The
cool.
nice part about, this is that this is a state approved form. for
Oh, is it?
Reassessment.
Okay,
It's the exact same contract that we previously had with the name change,
yeah,
basically.
okay.
And so anticipating that that was going to be the situation, also anticipating that Kim needs this.
Yeah.
I've already reviewed the contract. He's already reviewed the contract. I'm comfortable with it. So if the commissioners completely so inclined, it is appropriate. Okay. Because otherwise we'll have that discussion.
All right, well, I would need a motion then to,
Well, should we do that in the regular meeting after we open our meeting?
Yes.
oh, this is strictly the bid up. I'm sorry, I apologize. Then we'll suspend then the bid opening portion and move into our regular meeting then. Thank you.
I move we approve, as council's advised, that we approve the bid as presented at this time.
Okay, you have a motion?
Yeah, I'll second.
Have a second. We're back to hand votes, guys. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. So, Kim, you can pick this. Does that need a request? Yeah, I think about that.
Pardon me?
Sign it.
All 3 copies.
Just yet.
Thank you all.
See a place to sign it.
Did you find the signature page? Let's-
You come, please.
Very last page looks, oh, that's the certificate of liability.
This is not inclusive.
Yeah,
I have one.
you have a page number?
There was some attachments and things to it, so.
It's not finding out.
That may not, it may not be in there, that may
Okay.
just use the one
All right.
that I locked, which is the extra contract.
I'm sorry.
Use this one, because I think I put Nathan on there, or the,
It had a big on it. I didn't see
okay.
a big difference.
Okay, it's good. You're good then. Never mind.
Okay.
You have the right one. Okay.
I'll put that back.
The only other thing I had to report on is the next item on the agenda.
Police.
Yeah. But, you know, Ed, in talking to an insurance company, had suggested that we should do a formal lease agreement with the vehicles that Becky's using out with the county council on aging. So Becky and I worked, Ed put that together. Your packet is a copy of that, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good document, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it just it spells out in writing exactly what all the other agreements say, but it makes it a concise statement. They're responsible for insurance, they're responsible for indemnify the county.
Yeah, we got a whole harmless. So, yeah. So I had before me the lease between the county and council on aging. I'm looking, I've looked for a motion to approve the lease, and it only has one signature.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the lease with the Council on Aging and with the chairman able to sign for the commissioners.
I'll second that motion.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, the same sign. Matt, did you say that's all you had?
That's all I have. Unless you have any questions for me.
Okay. All right, cool.
I do believe we're having, I guess, this. According to Chad, I reached out to him today.
Okay.
On at 5:30.
Here,
Here, just back to normal meetings.
regular meeting, yeah, no go-to. Okay.
Open to the public.
Okay. So we won't need you guys to do go-to or anything. Okay. All right, next on the agenda is Nathan Bilger.
Good afternoon. First thing that I've got for you, I've got two plats and we'll take them in separate chunks. So the first one is a one lot plat, it's called Soonard's Reserve, located on South 300 West. I do have a PowerPoint that includes more information on this if you want to start into the PowerPoint slides. right now, because it was all part of the same meeting. Otherwise, this is a standard one lot subdivision. It does use all the frontage of the parent tract, meaning that the remainder does need to be combined with an adjacent tract as part of the overall recordation process. Planning Commission voted to approve this unanimous.
Yeah.
Everybody did. There was some concern about drainage. There is a natural grass waterway that goes through there, but that seems to have been addressed, particularly since the home location inside would be somewhat limited on property. And of course, required right-of-ways also being included.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve this, Nathan, however you pronounce this, reserve, Saunders Reserve, one lot plat subdivision.
I'll make a second to approve the Sunards Reserve.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you. Jana, if you could skip forward to the rezoning section. There we go.
Hang on.
Sure.
Just get these signed and we'll.
Yeah.
I want to give you 100%. That's great.
Appreciate that.
All right, if you would, then thank you.
Sure. So the next thing that I've got is rezoning request by Warner Holdings LLC, I believe. And this is a rezoning request for a portion of property down along US 24 in our far southeast corner of the county. Right on the north side of 24 and just west of the county line. It's a rezoning request to go from AG agricultural, which it's been for as long as we've had zoning, to GC general commercial. It's also proposed in the plat that's second to come, proposed to be split basically in half. The western portion would be used for mini warehouses and the eastern portion would be kept by Mr. Warner basically for his long-term personal use and then potentially for sale at some point in the future, beyond the foreseeable future though. I do want to note that the rezoning request is not because of the mini warehouse component of this, but the petitioner is, and the developer is looking to do boat storage and vehicle storage, which is only allowable under the GC general commercial zoning. Mini warehouses by themselves are allowable by special exception under the existing AG zoning. So it was because of that additional facet of the business plan that the rezoning itself was required, not a special exception. So going through this real quick, Jana. So there is the location. The fairly new looking building on the eastern portion of the property is Mr. Warner's barn for personal storage. Jana, if you could continue. Another view to the north there, as you can see, is Manitou Woods. There is a buffer strip both along the south side of Manitou Woods and then another buffer strip that is required on this property on the north side of Mr. Warner's property that was included as part of a set of deed restrictions as handed down over time. And that is included in the plat, which we'll get to if and when we get to that. So if you could go to the next slide. This is the zoning map of the vicinity. You can see Mr. Warner's property to the east, right at the corner of 800 and 24 was rezoned GC General Commercial a few years ago. That was to allow for an auto repair business that I believe his son was operating at the time. There's also some general commercial farther south along 24 when you get to the Roanoke Woodworking Shop in that vicinity. Across the highway is IN Heavy Industrial. That's due to the historic use of being a gravel pit. Obviously, right now it's just water. However, there is a laydown yard there. To the east in Allen County, you have a mix of residential, agricultural, and commercial, as you can see there, and industrial again, where the gravel pit was. And then Manitou Woods and the rest of this section of Jefferson Township is zoned AG agricultural. So this would be, again, going to commercial along the highway there. Yeah, I guess that's what you could say. Next. Comprehensive plan, giving reasonable regard to the comprehensive plan is required by both the Plan Commission and commissioners. So here's this portion. The darker green is agricultural. The medium green is transitional ag. The yellow color here is rural residential, and the purple is industrial. And the darkest green is conservation, primarily floodplains. So if you're using 24 as a dividing line, this would fall into the rural residential area by map. However, there is text in the comprehensive plan that does discuss the need for commercial development and neighborhood nodes and so on, as well as locating commercial along high traffic roads. It also does make the recommendation that utilities be in proximity, public utilities, so sewer and water. In this case, neither is immediately available. They're about a quarter to a half mile farther into Allen County. However, the proposed use is for mini warehouses, so there would not be a lot of usage of public utilities. So it's one of the few commercial uses that doesn't really need to have, by itself, doesn't need to have public sewer and water. So that did play into the Plan Commission's decision based upon their discussion. And I think last slide, yes. And as I said, reasonable regard must be paid to those criteria, comprehensive plan being number one. And then you did receive a copy of the staff report sent to the Plan Commission, which outlines notes on the rest of it. The vote at the Plan Commission was 6-2, with Mr. Hodges and Mr. Western voting against the favorable recommendation. And since Mr. Western was there, he could discuss that if he wishes. But generally, again, the discussion centered around traffic, the adjacent neighbors, and then utilities was another component as well. So with that, this did receive favorable recommendation, again, 6-2 from the Plan Commission. And if you have questions for me, I'd be happy to address them. Mr. Warner's here, and I believe remonstrators are as well if you wish to have them speak.
Nathan, ingress egress, are there issues with accessing?
Correct. Could you back up to one of the aerials? That'll work. The western portion, and this is more or less proposed to be divided along that tree line there in the center. So the western portion, the developer for the mini warehouses has already contacted NDOT, and NDOT has preliminarily approved a right-in, right-out access, which for mini warehouses seems to be okay for them. They don't need to have full access, just some sort of access. The eastern portion has frontage along 800 East, and if and when that gets developed, because both are owned by Warner Holdings or the Warners generally, my expectation would be that those would be basically used in conjunction with each other. So you would have access primarily off of 800 East if and when that gets developed.
If you did come in off of 800 East, or any site distance issues there?
Brandon would have to address that. There is a hill there, and I don't know exactly what the site distance would be. Bit of concern with some stacking along 800 East. as people wait to get onto 24, which
Yeah.
was addressed. Some of the neighbors from Manitou Woods did bring that up. Sometimes traffic kind of gets a little lengthy there. And then also traffic coming off of 24 northbound onto 800, just people are accelerating. So again, you're in close proximity to an intersection, so you do have to deal with that.
Did you want to say anything? We'll have Mr. Warner speak, and then we'll have the other gentleman speak.
The reason planning commission, I had a negative vote was the construction is on the west half. You can see the tree line there. Mr. Warner stated that he was going to keep the eastern half for his own personal use. And so I just thought at the time, there was no sense of changing the whole property if he was going to keep it for his personal use. It'd always come back later for rezoning if the need be down the road. That was my thinking that night. Wasn't a big deal either way, but that's why I voted that way.
Okay.
And that, well, you can see that tree line was a natural buffer between the two.
Sure. Yep. And it, I hesitate to call the structure on that land a barn. It's quite a beautiful building. And could, once zoned, could various things, could you turn that into a
Turn it into something else.
yeah.
There is a building code issue in that you would have to go through the conversion process because it was built as an agricultural class 2 building.
Right.
So you'd have to bring it up to class 1 standards, which happens. So that'd be one step. But otherwise, there's plenty of acreage there for parking and so on. So yeah, could be possible.
It's pretty fancy class 2 building.
Yeah.
Really nice.
So because of deed restrictions, they'd have to keep that buffer on that, it'd be on the north side there. So
That's correct.
Correct. I believe when you put the two buffers together, the one on the south side of Manitou and the north side of the Warner property, it roughly comes out to be about 100 feet. However, it does vary somewhat along the Manitou Wood side.
Yeah, and the developer stated that he was just going to use the open property that was there on the west section.
Is Mr. Warner here? Would you like to come up here and talk about it? We need to have you up here so you can use the microphone.
I have some exhibits here. I have copies of our presentation from the Plan Commission meeting with the two that were not there, like a copy.
Yeah.
sure.
It's up to you. I'm certainly not going to go through this.
Thank you. All right.
First of all, thank you for your comments about my building. We bought property on the corner, Warner Holdings, which is a residential rental business. And we've upgraded that significantly since we bought it 7 years ago. And one of the things I wanted to do is to have a place where I could store some of my vehicles. And that's the reason we built that building. And it started off as more of a barn. I think I got the permit as a storage facility, not a barn, but
Okay.
but then after we got kind of started, I decided to put a porch on the front of it. It dresses it up some. So I think that enhances the look of it. I prepared one additional exhibit since the meeting, which addresses, and here's a summary out of there that I'll talk about. This is the new exhibit, and these are 3 summary pages from the presentation on May 20th. The graphic that I just handed you is a picture that shows along the north boundary, which is the white line there, of our property that we're seeking the rezoning and subdivision for. South of that, 50 feet, and the dotted yellow line is the 50 feet deed restriction on our property. It goes with the property. And it is basically, it says that improvements are prohibited in that area. So basically, it's to be retained as a natural area. And if you see on the north of our property line, there is what's called a Block A, part of Manitou Woods subdivision plat. And that extends, it's about 4.5 acres, but it extends from South 800 East to the end of the cul-de-sac down at the far end of the subdivision. And that is intended by the developer to serve as a barrier or to inhibit construction on the other side of the road. And that was the same developer who put the deed restriction on our property. So the intent there was to provide kind of a double buffer, which would screen whatever was developed there. So at any rate, what I've done on that is shown all the houses in Manitou Woods that have a driveway onto Glacier Creek Drive and the distances from those structures to that line. In all cases, the distance is more than 300 feet, more than the distance of a football field. And you can see from that graphic that it's all those areas are densely wooded. So certainly through most of the year, there's no way to see through there. And in the wintertime, it's pretty dense wooded area, so that you would see possibly some light if there were light, but I don't think you're going to see structures on the other side of the woods. I also point out that that there's a rectangle on the lower left of that picture, and that's the area that the intended buyer of the property intends to begin construction of these self-storage units, and the distances are shown there. That's at the far very west end of that property and less likely to be a problem, I would think, from the standpoint of those homes. By the way, the potential buyer and developer is here today, David Krushower, and he can answer any questions you might have about the development. I'll just give you some quick summaries from this presentation that we made. Question is, why are we seeking this subdivision rezoning? And for background, we bought this 25-acre parcel about 4 years ago, primarily with the intention for me to build that storage building. It was nearby to our other property, seemed convenient, nearby where we live, and in the meantime, we've gone ahead and had contract farming of the fields there, about 12 acres farmed. So then we built the building. We're still farming around that, but it's becoming a little more difficult to get farming equipment in there off of the highway and so forth, and it's less ground to farm. So that's become a little problem. The original farmer declined to continue farming, and I found another fellow. So we considered as a possibility for that west section, which is now proposed to be lot number 2, we considered possibility of large residential lots. And principally, we didn't pursue that because of our not being developers and having to go through the process of selling the lots and developing lots and so forth. And then we had a number of inquiries about that property. I still get inquiries once a week or so from the sign that I have out there. And, but many of the inquiries I got just didn't seem to be appropriate uses. I mean, some would be. There were a couple of churches that contacted me about buying it. But about early, I guess it was late last year, David approached us about the self-storage units. And as we talked, it seemed like that was a logical use for the land. And my next exhibit is why the proposed self-storage business is a good solution. One is that new traffic generated will be low, and that resulted in NDOT determining that simple ingress driveway would be suitable. And as a type of business that has limited hours of operation, mostly daylight hours, and that the result should be little noise and commotion due to the business. David's plan is to put motion activated LED lighting up so that there wouldn't be continuous possibly annoying floodlights. There's also there are restrictions on this property from the deed standpoint of how much light you can generate as well. The other advantage to this type of business is that there's ample space to construct multiple storage buildings, driveways, and possibly install retention or detention ponds to handle the drainage. So it's a large enough parcel to do a good job of placing the buildings on the property. And as Nathan mentioned, this is a type of business in contrast to retail and office buildings or whatever, where you might have to have public water or sewer. And in this case, the only expected need for those utilities would be possibly a restroom in the office for the business, which could be handled as is in my building with a septic system and a well. And, you know, the similar property, so I'm sure the ground would perk over there. And finally, it's the type of facility that will be fenced and secured for customer access only during specified hours. So there should not be, you know, traffic at night or anything that would raise concerns about security for the neighborhood. They do intend to fence this. And Nathan mentioned one thing, and that is that the type of facility that they propose includes the storage of vehicles like RVs or boats outside. And David has said that they plan to construct the buildings such that those storage items would be more in the interior of the buildings, not inside the buildings, but shielded by the buildings rather than a big parking lot out front. Now, I should note, I don't know what his plans completely are, but that whole frontage from the far west, southwest corner along US 24 up to my building, basically that whole frontage is a tree line. So as you drive down 24, you don't even notice that that's a farm field. And once, I suspect, when you put a driveway in, you'll open some of that up so that people can see there's a business there. But I would think that a lot of that would continue to be screened, both from 24, the buildings, and possibly what you're storing outside. So that's all I have. Do you, any questions or?
I think for the developer, so will this be a 24/7 facility?
We haven't decided if that's originally that was the idea, but if we can restrict hours, we could do that too. Some facilities are open till 10 or till 8. So if that was the deciding factor, I don't think it'd be that big a deal.
Okay. Well, I mean, the facility that I'm familiar with, you could get a gate opener
Yeah.
for a specified amount of time. So even though it was gated in, you know, anyone who had space in there could get a.
Right, that's the way most of them are, is I think 24/7 access.
Right.
We're flexible.
You haven't decided if it's 24/7.
No, well, originally it was gonna be 24/7.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's showstopper. Then we could restrict our hours.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
I guess I do have a question, since Tom brought this up, is, you know, why don't you just, why did you not go for the west side as a GC, just leaving that, going to that?
Well, I was advised that it would make more sense to just rezone the whole thing. And one of the patrons at the hearing mentioned that it's kind of a patchwork if you would leave, you know, do commercial, then ag, then commercial, then ag, and commercial. So I initially was on the fence about that, but I decided, well, you know, you file for the zoning permit and the time involved, why not go ahead and do it now? And as I've said in the presentation and Nathan reiterated, we don't have any current plans to develop or sell that. Maybe when I'm gone, something will have to be done. Anything else?
Else for Mr. Warner? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I know we have a remonstrance, so Mr. Yeah. And if you would, when you sit down, identify yourself and your address, please.
I think you need to know this. All of yours. If you've seen this, I know you have.
Thank you.
My name is Dave Schmautz, and I'm a homeowner that lives adjacent to Glacier Creek Drive. And I appreciate the chance to come in and visit and share some concerns that I have myself, but also all of our neighbors have. And I'm going to share some things with you that weren't shared at the Planning Commission meeting because we weren't allowed the time to do that. We got 3 minutes to speak compared to the other group that had almost an hour. So some of the things I want to talk about, a little bit about the background of the lots that we're discussing here. They were owned by the WCLA Corporation, which is owned by John Pop. I don't know if any of you know him. He's out of Fort Wayne. He's an older gentleman. He's the gentleman that built the development Manitou Woods and also owned those properties. And he owned those properties. I've had a lot of conversations with him. In fact, the strip of property that you're talking about that runs parallel to these lots, that real tiny, almost like useless piece of property that runs parallel to Glacier Creek Drive. It's about 5 acres. John owns that as well as he owned the lot that Mr. Warner now owns. And in 2004, John sold the lot that Mr. Warner bought to Jane DeHaven and a Dr. House. They were neighbors where I live, in the same neighborhood I live, just north of Glacier Creek Drive. And they wanted to buy that property to make sure it was maintained so we had a good buffer between our neighborhood and US 24. And when you speak with John Pop, the developer, that's the reason he had the property. He wanted that whole piece of ground to be maintained as a buffer for the neighborhood. When the DeHavens and Houses wanted to buy the property, they were neighbors, so he felt it was in good hands. So he went ahead and sold it to them. He maintained a long, narrow strip of ground that runs along Glacier Creek, just north of the property in question here. Mr. Pop contacted some of us neighbors and asked if he could just basically at no charge transfer that property to one of us, because he's getting older. He's now in his 90s. And wanted someone to take ownership of that. He wanted someone who lived in the neighborhood to own that piece of property so they could care for it and make sure that he took a lot of pride in the neighborhood when he developed it and built it. I stepped up and told him I wouldn't take it at no charge. I bought it from him. I paid him $10,000 for it. It's kind of a useless piece of ground, but I figured the man has for so many years paid taxes on and protected our interests that it was something I should do. So I did that. So I'm now the owner of that long stretch of property. And so DeHavens and Dr. House owned that property since 2004. At some point, when they both moved out of the neighborhood and they decided they wanted to sell the property and they didn't live there anymore, they wanted to sell it. So they put it up for sale. And shortly after they put it up for sale, they had an idea, I guess, and that was, let's rezone it. Maybe we do get more money for it, or maybe they'd be more attractive to sell if it was rezoned. So they attempted to rezone it to industrial. And Fred Warner spoke about that. At the time they rezoned it, there was a hearing with the Planning Commission, and the neighbors were really upset. The industrial is something that was very scary for the neighborhood. And we went to the Planning Commission, and a couple things that haven't come up. You may have read them because they're in your staff reports. But a couple things. One is Fred Warner actually worked very hard to defeat that rezoning to industrial. And he contacted at least one neighbor that I know of and asked them to attend the Planning Commission meeting in an effort to defeat it. He did not think the ground should be rezoned. And if you read your staff notes, in the notes, it does say that he went further and said that he did not believe the ground should be even rezoned for commercial. It's in your staff notes. Anyway, the effort to rezone it to industrial was dropped. Sometime after that effort, Mr. Warner then met with DeHaven and House and purchased the property. When he purchased the property, it was zoned obviously agricultural, and he knew full well it was zoned agricultural when he bought the property. He helped defeat it. Okay. Now he's looking to have the property rezoned commercial. So I'm not sure if it wasn't right to rezone it back then and he fought it, whether it be industrial or commercial, why it would have changed. Why is it right now to rezone it commercial? He's also said that lot number 1 will only be a barn. It's personal use. He has no plans. In fact, I think someone had asked him, do you ever plan to even put a house on it or anything like that? He said, well, I have no plans to do that. If I did, we'd build it behind the barn would be in front of the house, I think, something like that. At the commission meeting, planning commission meeting, it was suggested that there be an amendment to make lot number 1, instead of rezoning it commercial, to leave it agricultural. And I'm thinking the idea was that maybe that would do something to cause the neighbors to feel a little more at ease with this project. And at the meeting, it was Mr. Warner said he couldn't agree to that because his wife was not there, and he wouldn't be able to make that decision without her approval because she is also one of the co-owners of the property. So I'm not sure why he didn't bother to call his wife, but he said he wasn't willing to change that. So the commission went ahead and voted on it as it was, and voted to put forward a pass recommendation to you all. The property, as it was discussed, has no water or sewer. It would be well and a septic system. There are no fire hydrants, obviously. We talked a little bit about the traffic on 24. Mr. Warner and his statements when he fought against the rezoning back 4 years ago, he mentioned that he was very concerned about the traffic coming down County Line Road and the trucks. It's in your staff report. And that was a real troublesome for him. And I can tell you, I have firsthand knowledge. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that intersection, but it's very dangerous. There's no left turn lane, there's no right turn lane. It's just one lane that drops out on Highway 24. And it's a 4-lane road. The speed limit is 60 miles per hour. It's like trying to pull out onto a freeway. And cars do get backed up, especially in the morning and after work. They get backed up the hill. There's some blind spots there on County Line 24. You come up over the hill down to the traffic to the stop sign. It's not a light. And it is dangerous now, and we can see there's not going to be a lot of traffic with a self-storage unit. Probably the danger is going to be when people are pulling up to that intersection today. If they have their turn signal on, you know they're going to turn, and you're taking every chance you can to get across the lanes to get out into traffic, and you'll pull out. If people are turning and they've got the turn signal on now, but maybe they're not going to turn to County Line Road. Today, there's no other place to turn. So they have the turn signal on, it's County Line Road. If they don't have their turn signal on, you know, they're going past. So if there's a self-storage unit, they could have a turn signal on and it would still potentially cause a problem. I know that firsthand because here about a year and a half ago, you take your chances when you have a break, you pull into traffic. I was at the stop sign and a car was coming, it had its turn signal on. I started to pull out and the driver must have changed his mind, turned his turn signal off. So my wife screamed, like a wife will do. And I threw it in reverse, backed up. In the meantime, the guy, this is embarrassing, the guy behind me, instead of waiting to see where he was, he had pulled forward, trying to sneak forward too, and I backed into him. So my accident was kind of a backwards accident, but it cost me over $1,000 to fix his car. But those things do happen. It's a very dangerous intersection. I hope you take some time to familiarize yourself with it. The other thing in the staff report, it mentions that it will impact property values. I think it goes on to say that there's no way to predict by how much it will impact the values, but it will. I can assure you they won't go up. If you had a choice to buy a home, two identical homes, and one you drove through the woods and you saw farm fields and different things on either side to get to your home, and then pull into your home and you saw nothing but woods or farm fields, that's got a certain value to it. If you drive to your home and you're driving past an area of ground that you can see the highway, you can see a self-storage unit. Self-storage units aren't attractive. I'm sure they'll do as much as they can to try to work with that, but most of them are typically cinder block buildings, chain link fence. And when they first discussed having also parking permits sold for this thing, it included RVs, boats, cars, trailers, this type of thing. And the idea was park around the perimeter. So we'd be driving by looking at something, I'm going to exaggerate, but it looks like a wrecking yard as we drive into our neighborhood. And the other question that was raised was about the tree lines and how much you can or can't see. In the summertime right now, you wouldn't be a problem. I mean, there's not a lot of big major trees. I mean, they can be spaced 15, 25 feet apart, big trees, but there's a lot of shrubs and brush. But once the leaves and the shrub and brush fall off, right today I can see 24. And I'll more clearly be able to see the self-storage. That's not even a question. And one of the reasons I handed you this map is if you look at this, the piece of property I now own that parallels Glacier Creek Drive is a very, very small portion of the tree line. As Mr. Pop had stated, this other lot was intended to be part of that buffer. The tree line on the other side of that's on this property that we're talking about, is very extensive. And the plan is even if they have an additional 50-foot buffer along there, in the winter, 6 or 7, 8 months out of the year, we're going to be staring right into the self-storage unit, the vehicles that are parked there, and possibly 24. We can see in the winter, we can see Mr. Warner's barn without question. So, I mean, our concern here is that the property values will be affected by this. The other thing to consider is if you looked at a Google map and just pull back and look at where this lot is, in Whitley County, everything is acreage. Every home's on acreage. Most of them are farms, and there's a lot of farms. Everything is acreage. And so the people that live in Whitley County, I mean, I would guess that there's very few, if any, that would be using a self-storage facility, because the people that live in this area won't have a need for it. I mean, they all live on acreage. They've all got outbuildings or sheds or something like this. The majority of the people, in fact, I think the developer mentioned this at the planning committee meeting, that the majority of the people that will be utilizing this facility are from Allen County. Okay. So if you can look at it from that perspective and say, if we're building this and it's in Whitley County, Does it benefit Whitley County residents in any way? Well, it's being frankly built for Allen County residents to service them. Then the other question would be, well, what about employment? Well, there's going to, is there any benefits there? Well, the employment, from an employment perspective, maybe he's going to hire one person, maybe 2 part-time people to work, 8 hours a day. It's probably going to be minimum wage. I mean, there will be some employment taxes you can charge for that. But other than the property tax that you'll be charging for this property in this building facility, and some small amount of employment tax, there's no other revenue. I'm trying to find the positive for the county. The county won't collect any funds related to the sales of rent. There's nothing that would go to the county for that. So the actual financials to the county are very, very minimal. And in fact, if property values decline in Manitou Woods, even a little bit, 5 or 6%, this actually could lose the county money. You'll have a self-storage unit built in Whitley County that'll be serving Allen County residents. And because of the values of some people who have chosen to live in Whitley County, because they like the rural nature of it. That's the reason I bought there. I almost bought a home in Allen County, literally across County Line Road. And my wife and I decided we want to be rural. We want to live in Whitley County. That's what we love. So we purposely bought there with that in mind. And so I mean, there's going to be little, financially speaking, if you just look at the merits of it from a business perspective, I mean, there's going to be very little financial incentive for the county to do it. So what's happened now is we built this thing, and I got a little testy the other day because I'm thinking to myself, Mr. Warner, his residence is in Allen County. He's got a couple rentals in Whitley, but his residence, primary residence, where he's got his big house, is in Allen County. The developer lives in Allen County. They're building this property in Whitley County for Allen County residents to serve them. Okay, that's what's good for them. That's the good part. The bad part for Whitley County is you've got all the residents that live in the neighborhood where I'm at. We're thinking this was a protected area. There's a buffer here. You can debate it all you want. There's going to be no question we're going to be able to see through the woods in the wintertime, especially if they carve these woods back, because the majority of our buffer right now is actually on this property. If they cut these back, even with that 50-foot buffer, we'll be able to clearly see through there and see the self-storage unit. We'll be able to see for the highway, for the parked vehicles. It'll be a real eyesore for us. So I guess I would kind of make the argument that bottom line, this is good for the seller. It's good for the developer. It's good for Allen County residents. I don't think it's good for Whitley County residents, those of us who are neighbors, because we feel our properties will be devalued because of it. It doesn't serve any Whitley County neighbors, meaning the facility is going to be great. There'll be people that will want to use this. Let them drive in and use this facility. They don't need it. It'll be serving Allen County residents. I think from a financial or tax perspective, it has the ability to either absolute worst case be neutral. So all you've done is upset a bunch of residents and there's no benefit to it. I mean, it's not like we built a business that's employing 20 people, 10 people, 50 people, and there's employment revenues that'll generate. And honestly, I'd have a hard time arguing with that. That's good for the county. How do you argue that? It's not. So I guess I would throw it out that the other concern that the neighbors have, I think a valid concern, is I handed you some pictures of Mr. Warner's barn. And some years ago, there was an effort, a lot of talk about it at least, to build a reception hall on the other side of Highway 24. I don't know if it was in Whitley County, Allen County. That fell through. I don't know why, but it fell through. So every one of the neighbors looks at this barn and says, that's not a long-term barn. In fact, I had a chance to talk to one of the commissioners, not one that's here, planning commissioners. And he and I talked about that, and we wondered, because at the planning commission meeting, it was discussed. And to Mr. Western's point, it was discussed, well, why don't we leave lot 1 agricultural? That might help the neighbors feel better about it. Let's leave lot 1 agricultural and just consider rezoning the other one. And Mr. Warner was greatly opposed to that. So then there was discussion about, well, what if he wouldn't get a hold of his wife? Well, what if we table it then till next month? Let him have a chance to talk to his wife, come back. And he did not want to do that. He said, I won't do that. You either vote on it or not. So anyway, it got voted on and got approved for a recommendation. So we're not sure why he wouldn't do that. And when I was talking to one of the other commissioners about it, I took the time to call in about 4 or 5 days later after things kind of settled and asked him about that. He said he agreed. He was very concerned about it. Wasn't sure he believed what was being said. In fact, his own words were, it's appeared to me there's a snake in the woodpile. And I kind of laughed. I said, well, it does to us too, because you look at that barn, it has the potential to be something much more. So, I mean, the concern initially is a self-storage unit, cutting away trees. It'll devalue our property. It provides no value to Whitley County. Great value to Allen County, but no value to Whitley County or its residents. It won't be used by us. But that barn is also of concern. And because there's no question that at some point in time, that could be something else. Something commercial where we've got commercial activities literally in our back door. So, and now I thought, when you come to something like this, it's important to come. This is what I wanted to share at the planning commission meeting. We didn't get a chance, but to offer some solutions and some ideas if there's a spirit of compromise at all. And it could be y'all just vote for it and say there's no compromise, you're out. It's happening, and that's fine. I've had my day in court, so that's why I thank you all so much, because I did get my day in court. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
But pardon?
Thank you.
Thank you. But I mean, a couple things that could be done that would, I think, cause everybody in the county to think, you know what, it's okay. It's okay. Is if there'd be agreement not to move the tree line at all. Put your self-storage unit in, but don't touch the tree line. That way, what all the barrier that is there, and the trees would remain. It would help us. That would be number one. And number two, if Mr. Warner's truthful, and this is personal property, he has no plans to do anything but use it for that, then leave it agricultural. That way we don't have to worry about, hey, once there's a stake in the ground, this baby's commercial, then it's hard to argue. It's like it's done. How do you come in and argue that for somebody who wants to put something in there that totally complies with how it's zoned already? It's different or impossible. So anyway, those are the points I wanted to make, and I am sincere, and I thank you for letting me have the time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think our job is to either say the plan commission did well and go for that or against it, one of the two. So I'm looking for a motion.
It's a tough one.
It's
a tough one.
Yeah, no, it is. It is tough. Now, one thing I was thinking about though, and Dave made good points about this barn, but then we don't have a crystal ball. We can't say what it could or should have. We can't do, in my way of thinking, we can't do any more than what the plan commission did, right? It's yes or no from us.
Correct.
I guess I know we could. I suppose technically we could, but I think at this point, our job is to go with plan commission or not go with plan commission.
I think my only consideration would be is if the tree line could be held as it is, but that's not our decision on that.
Yeah, I get to thinking about that too. I mean,
And again, it is his property.
If I may.
Sure. Sure.
The plan commission and the legislative body, so the commissioners in this case, can request or require commitments. We've talked about that before. And if you did want to consider a landscape buffer, however you want to word it, that could be a requested commitment. That's a condition of approval of the rezoning. You do have that option, and the commissioners can make that over and above the plan commission. When you get into other modifications, then it gets complicated, but simply making another condition / commitment, you can do that if you wish to do so.
I have a question for Mr. Warner. On this paper you gave us that shows the white line is property line. The yellow dotted line is in the deed of the buffer zone, correct?
In the deed for the
25 acres.
Yes.
It specifies that on the north property line, there is, I don't remember the exact term, we could call it buffer zone. It is.
Yeah,
an area
for whatever terminology.
Undisturbed and.
Right. Now, what is the width of that?
50 feet. And that block A, I think varies from, well, depending on whether you go from the edge of the road to the center of the road, but I think it's 60 to 100 feet. As you go down that road, it varies.
Would that be a consideration to keep that tree line as is on the north side?
Beyond 50 feet.
Yeah.
Look at how that goes across, like, if you look at that northeast section that goes out to South 800 East, that 50 feet binds access to South 800 East, right? There's a,
Right.
I don't know what it's 20 feet or 30 feet, whatever. So I would have a concern about making that 100 feet, because that would really cut off possibility of having access in the future from county line.
What about just the west part of that? Just,
We don't intend to cut down hardly any trees, but I mean, they'd like to cut down a handful, to square up a property. It's kind of, we don't intend to cut down very many, because most storage places are on about 5 acres. This is 14. We have plenty of space. So we don't really need a lot of the woods, but I'd like to kind of still have the ability to maybe square it off a little bit,
It's more his call, but we have this agreement for him to buy the property.
Sure.
To put a restriction on that property. He's agreeable, I'm agreeable.
I'm not sure how we do that
We
though.
could have, additional length or width or distance from the property line, is that what you have in mind?
Yeah,
And of course, the woods vary, as you
right.
go across the, from Mr. Small's house, there's a real pretty wide area of woods on this property. And we can still see 24 in winter. Well,
As Mr. Small said, I was the one that made the amendment that failed at the planning commission meeting. And I had a concern about ever putting a driveway on 800 to start with on that slope. It's just not a good place if we approve the whole property. That was one of my concerns, and the other one was the natural barrier there in the middle. I have no issue. I don't have any issue about building your storage unit down here in the open area on the west side. But I have some issues of if that storage area gets up there into that natural buffer that's already in place. And I don't, according to this picture, it shows some of that construction up there in that tree line. Whether that's actual or just proposed,
That's a sales picture.
I'm
just to square it off.
okay. Like I said, I'm uncertain of that.
One of the things is that will not be a development plan required to be approved before any structure can be put in there. And I would think that could be addressed then, right or not?
To a certain degree, it can be.
But I'm not sure, does development plans talk about natural wooded areas or anything like that?
no specifics on natural buffers and so on, unless the planning commission or commissioners add something to say, watch for this.
But there are commission rules in your comprehensive plan that talk about maintaining property values, not taking action that would devalue property. Unless it was for the overall benefit of the county, somehow it would outweigh it.
But as I see it, this piece of property along Highway 24 is a perfect place for commercial. If it gets rezoned to a commercial anything. This is a pretty low-key commercial proposal, what they're gonna put in place. We could approve something a lot more detrimental to those houses that'd be perfectly legal along here if it's zoned commercial. But I'm still wrestling with this, with this east half of this property. As I was at the planning commission meeting.
But I'm afraid we have to deal with one proposal.
Theoretically, we either vote, the proposal from the planning commission gets voted up or down.
Unless you do what Nathan said.
Yeah, that
Which would probably require tabling this.
amendment you can add on that level. Anything else, you really should take that certified from the planning commission. Either yes or no.
So there's no tabling at this point to,
You can table, yes. You have 90
Are we
days.
just kicking the can down the road though?
I'm not sure about that because I guess, again, my concern is the buffer area, and you already have, you've got a buffer area. But I'd like to see a little bit more of a buffer, but that is Mr. Warner's land. I mean, I guess I'm torn on
Yeah,
this one.
right, correct. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Everybody's right, everybody's wrong. So I got it.
It is his land, for agriculture, and now he's trying to change it. So that is something I believe that we as neighbors and you all have a right to speak on.
I don't really want to get into a match here, but I do object to some of Mr. Schmaltz's references to me and my reputation, or I consider disrespect.
Okay.
First of all, with respect to the.
I think if you want to talk, I think you really need to come up here.
Right.
So it's recordings can't pick up anything back there.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, we're going to move this along, so
Okay,
go ahead and make
okay,
your
real
point.
quick. First thing, there was talk about this rezoning several years ago where a proposal was to make this property industrial. I did, it's on the record, I did speak against that. The petitioner to make it industrial were the people that I bought this property from. Industrial doesn't make a whit of sense in that property. First of all, any industrial is going to take utilities. And, you know, Columbia City is not going to put a utility down that far corner, you know. And so at any rate, that was my basis for objecting to that at the time. Secondly, those owners didn't have a plan. You know, the question was, well, what kind of industrial? Who's your client? Well, we don't have one. They asked the petitioner where the closest utilities were. Well, he didn't know. You know, it was just an effort to upgrade the land. And so I'm somehow disreputable because I want to sell that land, and the best use of it seems to be commercial of the type that we discovered is in demand. So I do not want to put in a 7-Eleven or anything else that would be objectionable to neighbors. I am a neighbor. And that's the second point, that this reception hall, and some people have asked me, is that going to be a restaurant? And I usually tell them, no, it's going to be a funeral home. You know, I mean, it's got 4 garage doors. It doesn't look like a reception hall or a restaurant or anything else. Certainly in the future, somebody could repurpose it. I don't know. But to suggest that there's some kind of devious plan here is bizarre. And finally, this whole line about living in one county or another. Well, Keith Bussey lives in Allen County, and Mark Millett lives in DeKalb County, and Dick Teets live in DeKalb County. And they bought property in Whitley County, and they built a steel mill. I worked for that company for 13 years before I retired. And I watched that steel mill go up, and I think it very much positively enhances the county. I drove by the brand new high school on the way in. I'm thinking that some of those tax revenues from Steel Dynamics helped to buy that school. So I think it's just bizarre to think that
Yeah,
we're in a separate.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that one.
That's all I'll say, but.
Kind of got to make a difference, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So gentlemen, it looks to me like, tell me if I'm wrong, we got 3 choices. We can go along with commissioner, we can not go along with commissioner, we can table it. That's the way I see it.
I don't know, I guess the planning commission. It was a 6-2 vote. I guess I'm going to have to make a motion that we approve as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to proceed. As presented.
Sorry.
Got a second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Okay. Now, Nathan, you had plat approval. Is that something different?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, it's another piece of this. The proposed plat to separate the property, the Warner property that you just rezoned. That's what this is a request for. So it would rezone it, excuse me, it would split it into basically 2 pieces. The Plan Commission did request 2 things to be added from what was originally proposed. Number 1 of which was to make sure that the 50-foot buffer that was just discussed showed up on the plat, which it does. And then there were some additional easements that needed to be added as well. And those are also shown for your reference. Along with the easements, you would also be accepting the dedication of right-of-way along that portion of frontage on 800 East. US 24 does not have any right-of-way being dedicated because NDOT has already acquired the right-of-way they need there. So we don't have any additional right-of-way going in that direction. Covenants are not separately added to this plat. However, reference is made to the deed restrictions that Mr. Warner had discussed before, so that this plat is tied back to, directly tied back to those deed restrictions.
Your flavor, gentlemen.
Soil tests still need to be done for a septic system. And I believe
Yeah, the new lot to the west would need 2 separate locations, and the lot to the east needs another location besides existing septic.
so before this can be recorded, they'll need to get the septic system or the soil test done.
Yeah.
So do we need to wait to pass this before?
I would hold off as staff on the secondary plat approval before getting the soil tests. So you could still move to accept it based on the right-of-way easements that you're accepting, and then it can't be recorded until everything is received.
I'm going to approve it with the right-of-way easements and the recording delays until the proper tests have been run.
With secondary staff approval.
Yeah, secondary staff approval was part of the plan commission motion. So, yeah.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same side.
Not to take any more of the commissioner's time, but do you have any other questions or comments for me to handle while I'm here?
Nothing from me. Anybody else?
Yeah, I do, but that's not the time.
I will be around.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
Scott Wagner, point of sale ordinance. Poor guy, he's only been here 22.5 times.
Is this for real this time?
Well, I don't know. Matt had some people that were concerned. I don't know if you contacted them.
Talking about one email we got. We did.
So I guess one of my questions I had for you was, is this more of a just notification to buyers of property, or is it something that we're looking at forcing people to do?
No, so under state law, you can buy a property as is, even if you're disclosed that it's an illegal septic or failing septic system, you can buy it as is, and this would not prevent that. The other ordinance that we looked at originally would do a lot more beyond that. This is simply a notification to the buyers of those 4.5 questions there of, you know, has the septic system been identified? Is it got a permit on file? That way buyers are aware of what they're getting. Because even on the disclosure form of current resale, it does say, you know, septic, any defects or anything like that, but does it say, is there a permit on file? Where's it located at? Has it been pumped or anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Basically, the only time you're going to ever get in trouble is if you purposely deceive somebody. And I think that was kind of Mr. Schrader's concern was, hey, how about if an outside, out-of-state company comes in, sells a property, exchanges hands, and then we send a letter to the new owner and they're like, oh, we didn't know that. Really, it's
But I think they might have a civil case in a case like that, so.
right.
So.
We're just trying to make sure that there's an extra step done in the real estate process that shows, you know, septic used to be $3,000 to $5,000 when I started this job. Now it's 15 to 20. So it's a big
Maybe
fight.
3,500.
Yeah, and this will take a lot out of somebody's
Yeah.
Savings.
And this may be bankruptcy or not
Absolutely.
bankruptcy.
Okay.
So
Got it.
But this, you know, if Matt's comfortable and you are, it's time to get this thing passed so we can get some teeth in this.
Right, we'll send that out to all the people that were notified beforehand, and it's drafted, recorded form once it's recorded. And to let them know, you know, it will be a little more on my time. Obviously, every house that's sold will have to have this form, and they'll send it to us, but I don't think it'll be tremendous.
Well, I think with the regional sewer district, we've proven that we're serious about getting the waters clean, and so we've got to follow through with this.
I agree.
And Matt, you're okay with it then?
Yeah, it's kind of based off of one that Allen County did. And they've been,
It's one-page form.
Yeah.
It's,
Can't get much simpler than that.
it just kind of gives, there'll be enough, we'll have to ease into figuring out how to make it work. It'll be different for everyone, but I think at least locally, everybody's had it at least twice, everybody's seen it.
Yes.
And if not more, we delayed it a little bit just to
Okay.
wanting to be heard about it.
Jan-
They have the ability to be.
Do you have a ordinance number on that?
Well, I just want to check with Nathan because I thought the Warner property was supposed to have an ordinance, so I don't want to get him out of order. And I never got anything from him ordinance wise that I know of. So, yes.
Well, one of the things that will be good with this is sometimes it's like, don't ask, don't tell kind of idea, like, yeah, the septic system goes out that way. And, oh, okay, it's fine. Yeah, sure, it's fine. Nobody knows that now they'll be like, well, maybe I want an inspection since you don't know where it's at, or we don't have a permit on file. That's gonna make people upset, but eventually you'll be to the point where if you have an old house, you probably have to put a new septic in to sell the house.
What are the 4 questions?
The 4 questions, one would be, is there a septic permit on file at the health department for the address? So yes or no. 2, has the septic system been located and marked? Yes or no. Has there been any updates or repairs recently? Yes or no. And the 4th question, has the septic tank been serviced or pumped? Yes or no. And can you provide a receipt? Very straightforward. Nothing prying into maintenance or anything like that, but just some simple stuff.
And it affects everybody and where they come.
Who sells a property that has a septic system?
Did we get an answer back?
And she's going to ask.
I see, okay. Okay.
And that form, if they're wanting to sell a
Then it
house,
was the
they get that
certification.
form from you.
Well, but yeah, we'll provide copies to all the real estate companies, and then they'll get copies of their own. They don't have to have anything specific for me, just to use the form.
The only 2 things I got from him, 2 pictures. Okay, so yes, his does require an ordinance. So the rezoning would be 2020-06. This would be 2020-07.
Okay, I'd make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2020-07, regulating the disclosure of on-site sewage disposal systems for property transfers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2020-07. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. And Scott, thanks for being patient. I know we.
You can still come back next meeting.
Well, if you're gonna have me continue to record the sessions, I probably will be here.
Is there a need to do that since the building's open?
That's up to your purview. It was on the agenda, so I assumed that I was supposed to show up, so I did. If you don't want me to do that, you just let me know. Otherwise, I'll continue to Facebook it live.
Willie, wrap it up to the board chair.
Yes, you can see as they pop up. We probably about 7 or 8 people already today.
And what was that ordinance number, please?
2020-07.
2020.
20-07.
Okay.
Anything else for me?
Thank you.
I guess I do. Do you have any COVID updates you want us to know about?
We are currently at 62 officially. Since the beginning of May, the state's taken over tracking a lot of those things, but we're still calling people. So when we find out they're Whitley County residents, we still follow up with them because the state's not making the connections of where they work or live. And I'm sure when the school season starts, we're going to need to question when we have positive adults or children, what school system they're in, because the schools are going to want to know. So yes, we met with the school system, met with the 4-H people. We're all a go for everything to restart. So.
Okay. So the 60, are they still kind of tending to be asymptomatic?
Yes, mild symptoms to asymptomatic.
Mild symptoms. Okay.
And what period of time is this over? The 60?
Oh, this has been since school since March. So March 14th.
I was say so.
So it's still, if you spread it out, that's, I would guesstimate 20 to 30% of the population's been exposed. It'll probably take about 18 months. So we're looking at this time next year to work its way through the population.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Carlee LaRue.
Good afternoon.
Morning.
I am here representing the Willie County Employee Wellness Committee. So you have a couple of handouts from me. Hopefully you got time to check over those. So in 2019 and 2020, I did a wellness survey with county employees, and about 85% in both years said that they'd be interested in a company wellness program and they'd be willing to participate in that. So the wellness committee was formed and we came up with an idea for a wellness program. The wellness program would be based on earning points for a reward of a monthly insurance premium discount. This would be for employees and spouses that are on insurance with the county. So the program is going to focus on holistic wellness with monthly challenges, but then they can also earn points through various health screenings. The one thing that they are required to participate in is a physical and a blood draw. Everything else is optional as long as they reach a certain amount of points to get that reward. So with the blood draw, I'm looking at this Parkview sheet here. I'm looking at the consultations package, which is option 2, and then the lab package for the comprehensive wellness profile, which would be $57 per participant. And that's just, we're looking at employees that are on county wellness insurance, and then their spouses too. So I talked to Michelle upstairs in the auditor's office, and it looks like right now we have 111 people that could participate in this program. If you have $57 per employee, you can expect to spend $6,327 if they're all going to do the blood draw, they're all going to participate in, which I don't expect every single person to do that, but that's probably your max number right there for if they did that blood draw. Right now, we're spending 70% of our preventable claims in 3 things: stroke, diabetes, and GERD and reflux, which can mostly be prevented through lifestyle change and knowing your numbers. So that's coming from this sheet pulled from our insurance right here. And then in a study that was done by the American Diabetes Association, one person that's diagnosed with diabetes will spend $16,752 a year in medical expenditures, and $9,601 is contributed to diabetes alone. So the goal of this whole program is to prevent those really costly diagnoses later on down the road, like diabetes or stroke, or really, really expensive surgeries. The goal is to increase our preventable costs or preventable medical costs. So besides the Parkview blood draw screening and the reduced premium for those that meet that point requirement, we're looking at one other cost thing, which would just be folders to have everybody's profile in. Probably about $72.20 if every one of those 111 participated. That's probably going to be a one-time cost. I would ask that everybody keep those folders, and so we don't have to buy those every single year. I know you've got time to look over this beforehand, but do you have any questions off of that?
How does this fit in with our insurance wellness program? I mean, isn't there a certain amount? That's not here. I mean, I thought each employee was allotted so much money for wellness. Am I wrong about that?
Well, it's as part of our insurance, the wellness doesn't, there are certain parts of the wellness program that don't have deductibles. And that's where that comes in rather than.
Okay.
And I've attached a little bit about what the wellness program is here, and they have their check sheet on the back. So this would be put into those folders. You have your options to earn 50 points. Some of this still might change. We need to go through and make sure it's not too easy or not too hard to get those 50 points for employees, 30 points for spouses. So that's one thing that we have to reconvene and make sure that is going to be good to go. We just need to check in with you on this. And with the monthly insurance premium discount, ultimately it's up to you on what that number would be. But what I would suggest is possibly, a 10% reduction for employees, 5% for spouses. So it'd be double for what the employee is compared to what the spouse is.
So, and how long would that go? As long as they're on that wellness program, they get the 10%.
Per year.
So if they start, say they started in January and they'd work up their points from January to December, and then that next calendar year, they'd get 12 months of the reduced premium.
Okay.
If they don't get their points the next year, then it stops. If they do, then it keeps going.
Your flavor, gentlemen.
Well, I guess my thought is since we've saved over $125,000 on our health insurance this year, that spending $7,000 plus, I'm not sure what the premium discount would be, but I can't imagine it's going to be, even double that. $15,000 savings, and knowing that it's a wellness program, that we're dealing with diabetes, we're dealing with GERD, we're dealing with heart issues. I just.
Carlee, if they don't participate, they sign up, but they don't participate, are they removed after 12 months?
If they sign up, so they're gonna have to do certain things throughout the year. They have to go to that blood draw, gotta do the physical. If they don't meet those 50 points for employees, they just don't get the reduced premium. They'll still be on our check sheet, but at the end of the year, we'll remove them and know that they won't get that reduction.
Okay. I just don't know where we go from here. Is that?
I think it'd be a favorable pass to the council.
It would be in the council. Well, okay. So I'd be looking for a motion for a favorable pass to the council.
I'd make a motion that we provide a favorable pass for the wellness program that Carlee's come up with the screening and the incentive option.
For a motion?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Now that means you gotta come to council meeting, okay?
I will be there.
So
Right now.
if you get this out to them beforehand, perfect. So
Thank you.
thank you for doing that. All right, I have in front of me ordinance number 2020-06. It's an ordinance amending the zoning classification of certain property from the AG to the GC commercial district. I need a motion on the ordinance 2020-06.
And that's dealing with the Warner property.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what we're doing, yeah.
Yeah, I move with approve it.
Second.
I'm sorry, yes, it specifies Frederick and Ann Warner, yes, okay, so, I'm sorry, your motion? Is that what it says?
Yes.
Motion,
Second.
second, all in favor, raise your right hand, all opposed, same sign. and I think I mentioned this, but at 3 o'clock, I need to leave the meeting for doctor appointment. So sorry about that.
You just ended.
Yeah. Brandon? Anything for us, buddy?
Try and make it quick, so you can make it legally. Community crossings, we are all good within that.
Hey, and I just want to thank you so much because you really maintained your cool. I probably didn't in my home office. I was probably kicking things. The stuff that, did you guys get the?
No, you were telling us about.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. It was third grade. I'm telling you, it was third grade.
Well,
But thank you very much for hanging in there.
I've been working on that one for a while now. I'm still not good at it, but I appreciate that.
You did great.
So the NDOT LPA agreements that you signed a few months ago, they're fully executed by all the parties. And the local review of our bid documents and estimates and all that is complete. So they did request a PO for the paving portion. So once that's approved, then they'll put the money in our account. So we're good there. We have started hauling stone for the gravel conversion project for 600 North. We can get halfway basically and stockpiling it in our yard. 1000 South project, we'll just haul straight out of Huntington. Talked to Brooks. They are last week for the paving. He said probably 6 weeks out. We'll give you 2 weeks notice. So
Pretty good, really.
That's not actually bad
no.
for all the community projects.
Did you get a copy of my budgets on ones? No? Okay. Well, last couple of years with budgets, particularly at the highway, has been kind of a struggle with adding new funds and
Oh, yes.
swapping accounts from fund to fund. This year, it's basically, it's other than salaries and benefits, it's all the same. They did go up a little bit, each one, basically because of salaries and benefits, but hopefully that will be a simpler review for council. And I can send you those so you have them.
We'll have that, Jen, I'll have that book here pretty good, pretty soon, and we get that
you
once you.
you make books for them also?
Yeah.
I make one for them.
Okay, all right. Lakewood Drive, 800 East. In fact, I didn't hear about the call, but NIPSCO is supposed to close 800 East. Call it a half mile north of 24 today. They've got that big 20-inch high pressure gas line that's intercontinental, okay? And it's got a leaking valve, which that's north of Manitou you were looking at.
Right, north of Manitou, on the west side of the road there. Yeah.
Private drive that the
That's right.
homeowners are paying Brooks to resurface their road. We coordinated it with Brooks and NIPSCO to do it during NIPSCO's closure. We're also going to extend a culvert because we're suspect that this deep ditch is causing the road to slide. I've had paving contractors pave over that twice because it keeps settling.
Yeah.
And so, and then while Brooks is doing Lakewood, we're gonna have them throw another.
This is kind of where that road, where it goes caddy across 800 East, that kind of that area where the NIPSCO station is, and then
Yes.
at some point they went
Right.
diagonally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that is happening this week. The closure, the county line improvement, the Lakewood paving.
For the whole week, or?
That's the plan. Both NIPSCO and Brooks, we're like 2-3 days, let's call it a week, and
If we get it done sooner, that'd be great. We are continuing to do improvements, wedging, drainage, culvert replacement. We've got some brush to cut back, I know, but tentatively our plan the week of July 13th or the week of the 20th, we plan on to start chip sealing. And Kevin made a route, we'll double seal 1,000 with 9s, which is our conversion. We'll go up and double seal with 9s, 600 north, and then start our single seal with 11s right there and work our way counterclockwise around the county. And then we'll end up back at 1,000 and put the third coat on that. So you probably haven't seen it. I sent an email. I talked to Matt a little bit. There is an ongoing issue with trucks parking at Rail Connect. And so I was asked to look into a no parking ordinance. The only no parking we have in our code of ordinances is an ordinance from 1962. So I just found one from the town of Fishers and used it as a template and sent it to Matt and CC'd you. So just got fun.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
We appreciate what you're doing. Doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you feeling a little better about the gas tax?
We just got receipts for LRS and MVH, and I didn't have a chance to look into, but there were two $96,000, which that was MVH and MVH restricted. So that'd be 192,000. And I mean, I know there were months where we were getting 230.
Okay.
So it's not huge,
but that could be in the middle of July. I didn't sit down and study.
Well, I think the dip it was there, but I think it's probably gone now.
I would think so.
By me trying to get out of my driveway, I decided.
Based on the line of traffic in US 30 last Wednesday afternoon, it probably went to 205 when the power was out. Yeah, I'd say there was a lot of vehicles on the road.
Yep. Sounds like the new loader got to work out last week.
Yes, yes.
Had to be pretty sweet running the new loader.
Yeah, right.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So I just assumed you just got busy and stayed busy, and I mean, we haven't had a chance to talk about the storm damage, but
it was, and they're still working on it today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. But you had to have done a great job getting the roads open because right after it happened, I think George had an issue too, about people like, I can't get home.
I was talking to Brandon.
I heard from several people. Kevin had, it started out, I mean, before the shift was even over, we sent 2 guys out and then it was 4. And we said, well, we'll just keep 2 more kind of on call. And before we all left, which, our office flooded. There's a slotted drain in front of the door that just couldn't take and water come in the door. So we were cleaning that mess up. And by the time we got that cleaned up, the 5th and 6th guys had taken off and Kevin ended up calling more in. So, yeah. And they, took the loader out to the lakes. He said that was I've heard, numerous reports, 600 north up there that we're getting ready to convert had great big trees across the Berg Road, great big trees. Wow. So.
Okay, well, we appreciate it. Tell the guys, thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
I do have a permit here. It would be from Duke Energy. They want to set 3 poles and go underground to an underground transformer on the customer property. This would be at 9704 West, 300 South, South Whitley.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign.
I would say if that looks like it's been through the washer, it's because last Wednesday afternoon, I left this building with that in my hand. Can you tell?
But it kind of looked like a coffee stain, but I
Well,
was.
that was prior to me getting.
Go on record, huh? That was prior. I want to talk a little bit about claims if we got just a chance. And I think I mentioned this before. And Scott, just bringing you in on this too, because I'm not sure I told you. But we had a department buy $130 worth of N95 masks, and we have them for free. Do you have any idea how that happened? Or you just- Yeah, okay, all right.
Don only signed that once.
Multiple times.
Yeah, and you have plenty of them, right? Yeah, so I'm not sure how it happened either, but I did have a chance to go over the claims, and that's kind of the biggest thing that I noticed. So, and kudos, you guys, I can still see the making the COVID-19 claims stand out, because those are the ones that we've got to keep track of, so.
Got signed some more.
Oh, yeah, that's right. My first day, sorry.
Was that the only thing you had with claims?
That's all I have with claims, yeah.
Motion to approve payroll claims?
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand.
Motion to approve regular claims?
We have a motion to approve regular claims.
Second.
Second?
And second, all in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you.
Well, we approve the minutes as presented.
And we have a motion to approve the minutes as written.
And I'll second that.
And a second, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Matt, do you have anything else?
I do have one more thing. that
Thank
Jana
you.
reminded me of. The confirmation letter we got from, on the TPS, the lease, just follow up email on it now.
Yeah.
It's, about that. We just, and this is set for the chairman to sign, so before you just take out of here. That just seems to be, that's kind of the trigger to the new lease going into effect now that we've turned the whole building over to them and
Oh, good.
gets the
Oh,
new increased rent amount started, so.
okay. We don't need action on this.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I already approved the lease,
Yeah.
that's just kind of confirmation that at this
Okay.
point,
Yeah, let's sort
they're in there, it's fully occupied.
Okay. Anybody in the audience have anything? Scott?
We spoke with New Jersey today, and our trailer for the Bachelor is almost completed. We've got this week, so it's gonna be moved to next week, if you're ready. So I'll find out how many of them, if they bill us, or if I have to take care of the check, or if I can drive it out of there. One of us will go out there and get it back. We have 2 gas stations left. We could wait on them, so we just.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's gonna be a very nice piece of equipment, so.
Already, we've been paying rent on the storage unit, so.
Okay, okay. Well, thanks for hanging in on that one. Anybody else? George? anything? No? Anything? Yeah. Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to it, second. Out of here.